And what I want to talk to you about today is really how you can probe your organization, which refers back to my latest book, the one that Alejandro just mentioned, which is on company-wide agility with beyond budgeting, open space, and sociocracy. So you could also think of, well, we put a lot of buzzwords here together. However, what I really want to get at today here is how you can use that for implementing a learning organization with what we call Bossa Nova, which is actually that combination of company-wide agility. I will get there in a minute. However, first of all, why is this actually important? I can assume you have heard that over the days more often, or will hear that more often. The reason is we are living in that what's called the VUCA world, a world that's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And well, I guess a lot of people have been talking about this for quite some time. However, just now in the pandemic, it really became apparent what that means. And just think about that last year around that time we are now, you probably have finished a lot of the plans that you wanted to implement over the year of 2020. So starting with your budget or any kind of products you wanted to develop or any other kind of things you endeavors you have planned for 2020. Now, at latest in March, it became apparent or evident that all these plans, all the time you have put in making those plans has been wasted. And so we really, in order to deal with this VUCA world, we need to be agile as a company. And what I mean with that is not that we are applying, for example, Scrum all over the place, but because, well, that wouldn't really get us anywhere, but to be more agile in the literal sense, meaning flexible, adaptive, responsive, fast, nimble, all of that. And just looking at one of the methods just wouldn't get us there. So we need to look broader. And if you really think of it, this will allow us to really be a learning organization because we adapt to what's happening. We are fast and responsive to what's going on and all of that. Now, how can this be happening? Well, first of all, I started already off that probably just using one of the methods, for example, for your meetings with the board of directors, if they would now run the meetings with a backlog and having a Scrum Master in place and so on, that might help the meeting getting more, I don't know, effective, maybe also more fun, but it wouldn't help the whole company to become more agile. So we have to look somewhere else. And the somewhere else is what we put together as the Bossa Nova. So bringing different streams together and looking at a company from different angles. So for example, if you still fix your budget on an annual basis, it's just so hard to be flexible and adjust to what's happening right now. So that's what Beyond Budgeting brings in. And I don't want to stress Beyond Budgeting too much because you will have Beate Bognes here right after me and he will explain everything what's about it. But keep in mind, it's one of the elements for being agile as a company. Then if you look at the OS of the Bossa Nova, the open space part, this is really about using the passion of the people and leverage their innovative potential and not limit people by just coming up with a job description, which is more used like a box where we put the people in and they can only operate according to that job description. Then looking at the other S, the sociocracy, which looks into how is the power actually distributed. So if we have a very centralized or top-down structure, a hierarchy, then very often we are just too slow for the VUCA world in order to make decisions. And then there is the A, which is the agile part, where everything you're talking about these days is circling around, and basically it's about inspecting and adapting all the time. So keep learning. This is my keyword. So the thing is, if you use these different perspectives on implementing company-wide agility, this is actually the way how you can incorporate the learnings that are happening while you're doing stuff. So although this is quite some time ago, so Peter Sankey made that quote in 1990, this is also when the book came out, The Fifth Discipline, it's still very true. So what we need right now is a learning organization, and this is an organization that encourages adaptive and generative learning, encourages their employees to think outside the box and to work in conjunction with other employees to find the best answer to any problem. Now, what does this actually mean, or how do companies do that? So how do they implement being a learning organization, or how do they implement company-wide agility? I have brought with me today 2 examples, just for giving you an idea of what this could mean. So first of all, looking at this kind of thing, which is an expense sheet submission. I guess you have something like that as well in your company. And the thing is, everything that we have in place around expenses of employees often, well, everything, I mean, like procedures, rules, also those forms, how to adhere to all of that, everything of those actually is often more a signal to the people, well, we trust you that you are really being responsible and make that €1 million project successful, but we don't trust you to, for example, buy a decent camera, or pre-pandemic to book a decent hotel or something like that. So we have to do something else in order to really show the trust that we are also showing at other places, so that every employee really knows that they are trusted. And so an example for that is this one. So it's a company I know of. It's called IT Agile. Well, they have Agile already in their name. And they had exactly this problem that some people said, well, the way we are dealing with expenses, and in that sense, it was mainly travel expenses, they felt like this isn't really Agile. We have Agile already in the name, but we just don't feel this is Agile. So they came up with 3 principles. The first one for everything around, in this case, travel expenses. The first one is, well, whenever people spend money, it has to be legal. So no corruption or anything like that. Well, that's should be a given, of course. Then the second principle is, well, when they're spending money, it should be done in a sensitive way. Nobody defined what that means. And the third thing, because it was on travel expenses, again, it's probably more pre-pandemic, although some people are still traveling for business, of course. The third principle was, you should take care of yourself when you spend money. And again, this hasn't been defined. When I talked to the CEO, Henning, like half a year after they have come up with those principles, and asked, like, how is it going? He said, well, what they figured was that about a third of the employees are traveling first class. We are talking traveling by train here because they're operating mainly in Germany. And 2/3 are traveling second class. And what they also found out, well, first of all, who is that? And he right away said, well, don't you think it's people like me being the CEO? It's actually the consultants doing that. And they also learned that everyone in the company was quite happy with that, because they said the consultants are the ones who are on the road the most, and therefore taking care of yourself means something different than for people who are not on the road all the time. So the big learning here is treating everyone in the same way doesn't mean treating everyone equal. And that's definitely a learning you should take with you for a lot of other kinds of decisions here. This is one example. I have another example on the same kind of problem, which is Miles, a Norwegian company. And they decided for all their expenses to come up only with one principle. And the one principle is, whenever you have an expenditure to take, you put what you expended on and how much it was on the intranet, which means, so not intra, net, which means it's kind of a peer control. And if you know you have to put it in the open, company wide open, then probably you think about what's legal sensitive and what taking care of yourself also means, although these were not or are not their principles. So this is one example. Coming up with the second example here, which is one which deals with how do you deal with your yearly performance evaluations, which result in people getting a bonus or a salary increase. And also here, it's a company who figured that, well, the way they're dealing with it is not really agile. And so they came up with the following, and it's the company called Mayflower, by the way. So a few people said, well, there has to be a different way how we do that. And it has to be more transparent, more open, maybe also more self-organization, and more also connected to how we focus on customer work and also how we self-organize. And so their first step was, it was first just a handful of people who said, well, what about if we just make open our salaries to the five of us? And they did, which already started some discussion. Then they started, well, what about if we make it open to the whole company? And they did, which then started even a bigger discussion, and more people also joined that and make their salary open. And I have to probably add here that Mayflower is also a German company. I'm from Germany. And they, well, making your salary open is really something people normally don't do. So it's a kind of a secret thing. So this started a lot of discussions, and over those discussions and several iterations, they came up with a process which is now well described. They even opened it up, and so we have a blog post on our website also about that, so you can read it through afterwards. Which is, they have for every salary discussions an elected salary representative who looks over all of these. Then the person who is under discussion, that person brings in two other people they trust, and then the manager of the branch. And they have a discussion about how does the person under question is really contributing to the goals of the company. How is the person, for example, helping others to do their job, or how does the person contribute to increase the customer value and whatever else is important for the company. And then they kind of decide, first of all, in a hidden manner, everyone secretly come up with what they think, what the salary increase should be for that person. And then they have an open discussion after they show their numbers and come up with an agreement on the salary increase. And after all those conversations have been done with all the people, then they look at, okay, what's in the pot really, how much money is available, and then maybe it will be adjusted relatively to what has been suggested for the individual people. As I mentioned before, so that's written up as a blog post, and you will find more details to that. The interesting thing is that it really covers a lot of the values that we are seeing that are really important if you implement Agile company-wide. And the values are, on the one hand, transparency, so making this open, then self-organizing, so the people have come up with that idea how to decide on that themselves, so it wasn't any kind of top-down decision. Then it's based on continuous learning, also the way they came up with the process, so they had many intermediate steps, and it's still kind of changing, but what I've just described is kind of where they are right now. And also referring everything back that they're doing to, well, what's helping actually our customers? So keep constant customer focus in mind. We also have a kind of a more official definition for these values. And you know what, I give you a little bit of time to read that through yourself. And so be quiet. I want to point out maybe just one of the things, which is transparency. Often people are a bit afraid of transparency because it sounds like, well, everything has to be transparent to everyone. That's actually not what it means. It means everything that needs to be known for the people who need to make a decision, that they get that information. and that it's easy for them to seek for that information. And of course, also that you provide everything somebody else needs to know. So it's a two-way thing, and it doesn't mean like everything needs to be known by everyone. Now, where do you start with such a kind of change? Well, it starts already like probably you can start everywhere. So you can start with changing your strategy, your structure, all the processes, because what we have learned over time is that strategy, structure, and process are all interconnected. And if you change one, the other one is following after. So for quite some time, we always thought strategy has always to go first. And then there came a time where people thought, well, but strategy actually follows structure. Luckily, nowadays, we know that this is all not the case, but it all follows each other. So what it really means, what you need to do is you start reflecting on the situation you are in. You come up with what we call a probe. For example, you experiment with what you just heard, what IT Agile, Miles, or Mayflower are doing. You run an experiment and you reflect again on your situation to see if it really helps you in your implementation of being, well, more agile or more flexible, responsive, adaptive, and so on. And it would really be great if you would also then publish that to your peers, which means inside the company, but maybe also outside, so that it would be possible for others to learn about that. Again, if Mayflower wouldn't have like talk about that, we would never know. I wouldn't have been able to share this with you. So a probe, therefore, needs to be put together with something like that. So this is the one about the travel expenses. So it has a background definition. You come up with a hypothesis, and the hypothesis can also be invalidated, so disproved. Then you run an experiment over a given period of time, for example, for 3 months with a few units. And if you see that this is working well, then you can roll it out. And what experiment do you run? For example, the one you just heard me talking about, for example, the thing that IT Agile has been doing, or Miles is doing, if we are talking about travel expenses. So for a learning organization, actually, what it really means is it's a group of people who are continually enhancing their capabilities to create what they want to create. So it means a continuous reflection on where are we, where do we want to go, what's our hypothesis around that, what kind of little experiment can we do in order to really make a difference, and then reflect on it again in order to see if what we have done, the change we have implemented, really made that change that we thought of that it will make. So this is what I would like to share with you today. And as I said, that well, this is based on our book on company-wide agility. And as you can see on this slide, actually we are at the moment translating the book into Spanish as well. And it's about a little bit over a third has been translated. And because this is also done in an agile way, you can go, well, there's a QR code, or you go to Limpa Pesa Nova en Español, and you can get the book now, and you will get all the updates for free till it's done. So this is your time to do that. So thank you very much.